All right, we're back with part 7 of my review. Part 7 of my review of Kathleen Zellner's newest motion on behalf of Steven Avery. The entire 149-page document is linked in the description below, so you can go have a view for yourself. It's crazy how much new information is in this document. If there was no reasonable doubt before, which of course there was, sorry my wires are falling here, there is a ton of reasonable doubt now. Not only reasonable doubt, they have proof that the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office withheld and suppressed more evidence during Steven Avery's first trial. If you're unsure what I'm talking about and this is the first video, go back and watch the other ones and your head will explode once you realize what the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office did, once again, for the second time, to Steven Avery. Alright, we're going to talk about how Steven Avery is not procedurally barred from raising his Brady claim. On April 12, 2021, Steven Avery filed the Thomas Sowinski motion to stay his appeal and remand for evaluation of a new claim. The appellate court determined that the circuit court should resolve on standalone basis. The appellate court also stated that Steven Avery will need to demonstrate why he could not have previously raised this claim. They didn't have the Thomas Sowinski evidence before to raise this claim because it was withheld from his original trial team in 2005. That's why. Now, to be fair, these people, maybe they knew about this, but probably they didn't, but maybe they did. Like the higher up courts might not have known that this call was suppressed. There's a chance they did, sure, but let's just say that they didn't. That's why they're saying that should have raised this information before. He couldn't. He didn't have it, including in his June 2017 motion. Before merits can be reached, current post-conviction counsel could not have brought the Thomas Sowinski filed motion with the appellate court prior to April 12, 2021, and the current motion prior to May of 2022 because they didn't have it. Therefore, the motions could not have been filed in any prior proceedings, including the filing of the June 2017 second post-conviction motion. The Sowinski evidence relayed by Thomas Sowinski to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office was never provided to Steven Avery's counsel by the state. The Sowinski evidence was only discovered by Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel after being alerted to its existence by Mr. Thomas Sowinski in December of 2020. Current post-conviction counsel had to then thoroughly investigate and corroborate Mr. Sowinski and the Sowinski evidence. They just didn't want to make sure that this was some random dude saying he did some random stuff all those years before. They had to prove that this guy was telling the truth. They probably get a ton of emails and calls based on how popular this case is by a whole bunch of people saying a whole bunch of stuff that isn't true. So of course they had to investigate Thomas Sowinski to make sure he was telling the truth. And what do you know? He was. Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel was diligent in investigating and corroborating Mr. Sowinski and the Sowinski evidence. The Sowinski evidence provided to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office on November 6, 2005 was unknown to Mr. Avery and discoverable at the time of Mr. Avery's 2017 post-conviction motion, 2013 post-conviction motion, direct appeal, and the 2007 trial. It could not have been known or discovered by Mr. Avery because Mr. Sowinski had not come forward to Mr. Avery's post-conviction counsel until April of 2021, and the state had suppressed the audio recording of his November 6, 2005 phone call to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office reporting his observations on November 5, 2005. Therefore, the Thomas Sowinski evidence was unknown at the time of Mr. Avery's conviction and was not discoverable by reasonable diligence and was not under the control or knowledge of Mr. Avery at any time prior to Mr. Sowinski contacting Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel in December of 2020. Even if the court determines There is not a Brady violation. The Sowinski evidence qualifies as newly discovered evidence as described above. Mr. Avery has a sufficient reason for not having brought forth the newly discovered evidence. Because Mr. Avery did not know and could not have known about the Sowinski evidence until Mr. Sowinski came forward in December of 2020, Mr. Avery's appeal was pending. Therefore, this court should find that Mr. Avery is not procedurally barred from raising his newly discovered evidence claim of his new Brady claim regarding the Sowinski evidence. Woo. And there's a second Brady violation. This one regards Teresa Halbach's RAV4. Kevin Romlo, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I will refer to him as Kevin. Going forward, came forth to Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel with new information in July of 2017. Provided an affidavit and supplemental affidavit to current post-conviction counsel because Mr. Avery's second post-conviction motion was filed in June 2017. These affidavits were filed in Mr. Avery's motion to reconsider the circuit court's October 2017 ruling denying his second post-conviction motion. In Kevin's affidavits, he described observing Teresa Halbach's RAV4 parked at the turnaround at the STH 147 and East Twin River Bridge on November 3rd and November 4th, 2005. Kevin describes in his affidavit reporting his observation to a Manitowoc Sheriff's deputy that he encountered on November 4th, 2005 at a Senex station on STH 147 in Mashot. No law enforcement report was ever generated by this sheriff deputy about this sheriff deputy's conversation between himself and Kevin. Kevin observed Teresa Halbach's RAV4 on November 3rd and November 4th, 2005 is material trial defense to counsel's theory that evidence was planted to frame Steven Avery. If the RAV4 was spotted at the turnaround on Highway 147 on November 3rd, November 4th, 2005, then it must have been moved and planted on Steven Avery's property before it was discovered November 5th, 2005. Clearly, this information supports trial defense counsel's theory that the RAV4 was planted on Steven Avery's salvage yard before it was discovered on November 5th, 2005. Kevin's observations on November 3rd, November 4th, 2005 of Teresa Halbach's vehicle at the turnabout on Highway 147 is corroborative of Thomas Sowinski's observation of the RAV4 being pushed down Avery Road, which directly intersects with Highway 147 in the early morning of November 5th, 2005. Both witnesses support trial defense's counsel's theory that the RAV4 was planted. It's absolutely crazy that two people saw this happen. It's crazy that they thought they could get away with it, and I guess because they did get away with it for so long. Steven Avery would have had no chance of ever getting out of prison if a film crew didn't randomly show up and blow this case up by putting it on Netflix. Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey would have no chance of ever getting out of prison. Now, you can bet the state isn't going to just roll over and let them out. They're going to fight this. But, man, it doesn't look like they have anything to stand on. But they hid evidence and stuff before, so they're definitely not past doing it again, I would assume, allegedly. Prosecutor Ken Kratz admitted in his closing arguments that the RAV4 couldn't be driven into the property unless somebody knew the property. The only other evidence presented by the state that the RAV4 never left the Avery property on October 31st, 2005 was Bobby Dassey's testimony that the RAV4 was still present when he left the property at 2:45 p.m. The trial defense counsel had no evidence from witnesses that the RAV4 was planted and simply argued in closing that there were lots of ways to get in and out for someone to plant the vehicle. In the appellate court's decision on July 2021 opinion, the appellate court noted that in Mr. Avery's motion for reconsideration, he raised the issue that the state withheld evidence that Teresa Halbach's vehicle was seen on the street days after her disappearance. Current post-conviction counsel could not have included Kevin's affidavit in its June 2017 filing on behalf of Mr. Avery, since Kevin had not yet come forward with evidence that establishes a Brady violation. There is no way that Kevin could have been discovered by prior defense counsel or current post-conviction counsel because no law enforcement reports were prepared about his conversation with the Manitowoc Sheriff's deputy, nor did he appear in any other law enforcement reports in the Halbach murder investigation. He had never been a customer at the Avery salvage yard. He had no connection to the family. Mr. Avery was unable to discover the Brady violation with reasonable diligence prior to filing his second post-conviction motion in June of 2017 because Kevin did not come forward to Mr. Avery's counsel until after June of 2017. He came forward in July of 2017. It would be impossible for Mr. Avery to have raised his Brady claim without Kevin first coming forward to current post-conviction counsel. Therefore, Mr. Avery has sufficient reason for not raising this issue previously, obviously, because they didn't have it. All right, that's where I'm going to end this video. The next video is going to be about, in the alternative, Mr. Avery is entitled to a new trial in the interest of justice. Yes, he is. All right, so we're getting through it. This was part 7. It is all linked in the description below, all 149 pages of this document. What do you think? What do you think so far? This is absolutely crazy that all of this stuff is going down. Like, the state withheld so much evidence the first time around. They're still probably withholding evidence now that Kathleen Zellner doesn't know about. Allegedly, of course. It's just crazy. It's going to be extremely interesting to see what the state says about all of this stuff. What do you think? What do you think so far? Let me know. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day. And I'll be back soon with part 8 of my review of Kathleen Zellner's newest motion. Have a good day.